Thank you for having me here. And it's actually, I've been a professor here for 1.5 years and I've never been in a lecture hall, so that's the first time. That was me exactly 20 years ago on a field trip in Kärnten with some mobility adventures. And as you see here, I was always interested in data and in digitizing business processes. And this is what this talk is about. How can businesses, especially in logistics, be more environmental friendly? Although businesses depend on economic growth, which destroys the planet to some extent, we can also find smart ways of making logistics operations smarter. And this is the idea, and this is what my research is about, not only about environmental research, but also about efficiency and reliability. And what I usually work with is I like to collect all the data I can get from operations of logistics, from operations of mobility. You have sensors everywhere. You are creating lots of data even exactly in this moment. And what I used to do is build mathematical models, complex models to figure out what is the most reliable, what is the most efficient way to deliver goods to people. And this could be the outcome. This is such a logistics plan where you deliver packages to people, and here you have maybe an old standard vehicle, and here you have an environmental friendly vehicle. And now the question is, how can you make your operations greener and smarter? Yeah, and this is much more complex than businesses can usually deal with. So this is what's been my research in recent years. Usually in logistics optimization, it's all about cost. Yeah, we don't care, I just exaggerate a little bit, we don't care about environment, but if environment becomes costly, then we take it into account. Yeah, so this is the issue that we need to actually consider when optimizing logistics operations. So this is not a joke. So 7-8 years ago, UPS started greenwashing and said, well, we save the environment by don't doing left turns anymore. Yeah, so this is how logistics companies started a couple of years ago, and this gave me some incentives to think about it. Is avoiding left turns the only way how we can make the environment greener? Yeah, and actually it's much more complicated. So I'm a business information systems guy, but you have to know a little bit about engineering here. So all the emissions models for road transportation tell you need to know something about the engine, how much you're carrying, and how fast you're going. And all the models on the market consider this to some extent. And I show you a very simple example from the beginning. So I had 250 million data points for speeds of Stuttgart in Germany. Now you try to find the environmental best way from airport to downtown, and you have these two options. And the standard path is the short option, and this is a good option for many times of the day, especially when there's no traffic jam. So stop and go is always very bad for the environment in terms of creating lots of CO2 emissions and other emissions. And if you have this situation of peak hours, then you take the standard path. But at peak hours, it may be even better to go through the woods and be on the road for longer, and this is better for the environment. Now switching to a fleet perspective, and you have an old vehicle, where do you want to use it? Yeah, if you minimize over the whole fleet where this vehicle should go, you keep it close to your depot, you keep the distance short if you want to minimize fuel. If you only look at the costs, you don't care. You send the vehicle everywhere, and you don't care about the environment very much. So what about congestion now? This is one of my favorite topics, has been for 10-15 years. How do you consider congestion and its impact? And as I said, it's bad for the environment in terms of emissions. And I want to show you what happens with our logistics plans when we consider congestion systematically. So what we do, or what we see here, is a simple truck that goes through the city of Stuttgart counterclockwise here. And we have all the metrics here. And this is at peak time. And you see, maybe you remember this a little moment, and you see at peak time starting at 3:30, this is how the truck goes. Yeah, now what happens when we have all that data and can also optimize for off-peak times, then this route, the order actually stays the same, but fuel consumption goes down by 5 liters, then you can convert it into emissions. And we also use the highway more because we can avoid stop and go. So what I wanted to show you here, we have to go to the very detailed level of operations, and this can be very significant when you consider all that data. There's some counterintuitive outcomes when you do all this analysis for all kinds of customers and trucks. So the direct way usually is energy efficient. The less detours, the better for the environment. But companies will say we don't care because we have to pay the driver and it takes much more time usually. Yeah. So what can politics do about it? This is my favorite picture, by the way, of my talk. I don't know. But what can politics do about it? They can, of course, increase tolls. Yeah, or they can increase the fuel price or so. And this is also something that needs to be done in a very smart way, because otherwise you get other outcomes than intended. So this is, again, a standard tour with today's fuel prices, and this is the optimum. And we go like this counterclockwise and pick up very heavy weights here and carry them around through the whole city, which is relatively bad for the environment. And now, I don't know if it's Kurz or Merkel or someone else in Stuttgart, some of the Green Party, they come up and say, let's open a congestion charge zone because we want to keep the polluting traffic out of the city. And now you need to consider that when doing your logistics business. And when you do that, for example, with increased fuel prices, then I show you the same tour again, and you can see what happens there. And now we still have our heavy customers here, but this tour totally flipped. Yeah, and we start at the same time, but in order to save money in this, because of the higher fuel prices, we carry around the heavy weights only a little bit through the city. So from a business perspective, you always need to translate environmental objectives into incentives. Yeah? In Singapore, for example, they have very complex systems with these toll bridges, and we did also some papers on, are they really effective? Are they really achieving the goals, and are they really helping to save the environment, or are we just pushing out the trucks to the suburbs, yeah, which is also not our goal. So this is, I was allowed to have one complicated slide. Judith said one is fine. No, she didn't. But anyway, so to sum it up, I love to collect lots of data, not only from trucks and from logistics, but also from mobility. So you saw my Canton picture. I like to store them and do meaningful things with them for business, make it more environmental friendly or reliable, or at least efficient, as we business guys usually do. So at this point, I'd like to thank you, and I'm happy to discuss this later with anyone. Thank you.